So part 6. After sitting for about 4 days, I came out the other day and tried to crank it. It's been a little cooler here. I'm guessing it was probably 50 some odd degrees in the shop. I don't have the heat turned on or anything. And the pony really had a hard time turning the big engine over. So I think the pony is actually having a little bit more trouble, or it has the same problems that the big engine does in terms of wet stacking. I didn't know if that existed in a gas engine. But I mean, more and more oil ends up on the floor every time I crank it. You can see here, when I cranked it the other day, you can actually see all the little oil droplets on the floor. So it's blowing a lot of oil. So certainly something that we need to, I need to address pretty quickly. So I figured I'd start off first with a compression test. So with the compression test, I finally got my service manual. This is a binder I had, and I just added the 820 manual to it because I already had quite a number of manuals. Obviously, I didn't have one for an 820, but I already had electrical systems. I still need the power troll manual and the diesel injection manual, stuff like that. So, you know, I'll work on that. But I figured since the cranking engine is probably the most important thing here, besides the radiator and the fuel leak, if I don't pay attention to the cranking engine, then I won't really need a reason to crank the main engine if I can't. So I started reading in the manual, and this is an original manual. So this is a 457 manual, SM2021. And I was reading about the compression test, and if the engine's in good condition, the compression pressure should be approximately 125 psi with no difference. Then you shouldn't have any more than 10 psi difference between the cylinders. Apply, and then after you do the initial compression test, apply oil to the ring area of the piston through the spark plug hole, using care not to get oil in the valves. And test the compression pressure again. If the pressure is higher, it indicates worn or stuck piston rings, and repeat the test in the other cylinders. If the pressure is low, even with oil applied to the piston rings, probably the valves are leaking or sticking. Low pressures could indicate one or more combination of the following: worn cylinders, worn rings, worn or burned or sticking valves. So I think a compression test is where I need to start. It says that we should remove the engine first in the compression test. I'm not exactly sure why we need to remove the engine first. So what I've done is, last time I shut the pony engine off, I let all the fuel get out of the carburetor, so it shouldn't run to begin with. I have my fancy compression tester right here, and I think I'm just going to use the 6-volt battery and do one cylinder at a time, put a little oil in there each time, and test the compression one by one. And just go on through the system, and then I'll figure out what they are. I'll try to get everything set up, and then I'll come back and try to get a video of everything as I test the compression. So it requires, got my spark plug wrenches out and got all my adapters for the compression fitting, or compression gauge. So anyway, once I get it all set up, I'll come back and show you what I'm doing. Okay, I got my compression tester set up. So basically I've got the dial, I've got it in the number 2 cylinder. I'll have to think about that, it's in the book. But I've got it plugged in here, and I've got the dial to where it's facing me when I sit in the seat. And certainly when I took the spark plugs out, there is nothing, absolutely nothing that concerns me about the spark plug. I mean, that spark plug is I don't think there's anything wrong with it. The spark plug and the wires look pretty nice. I mean, you can see the wires right here. There's nothing apparently wrong with them. Let me dangle that out there before it grabs on something. So anyway, we'll get up on the seat, and I'll turn the pony over and see how compression looks. And I'll come back and I'll try to zoom in on the gauge while I'm cranking it. Alright, we're going to see how good I am at this. See if I can focus it in on that gauge. I'm sitting back on the seat and I've got the camera zoomed all the way in. I've got the ignition on the motor, and I've got the throttle open, so the governor's open. I have the choke closed, or the choke open, so there's no choke on the engine. The gas is turned off, obviously. The gas has been drained and everything, so I shouldn't have to worry about the engine cranking. So here we go. 120. I'll put some oil in there, and we'll see if there's anything else I need to do. But 120 is certainly not something I'm going to complain about for right now. So I'll get back down on the ground, put some oil in the cylinder, and I'll come back and we'll do it again. Okay, I've got the oil in the cylinders, and you know, after I got down off the seat, I got to thinking about it. It's like 120, the minimum's 125, so maybe the 120 is not so good. I rebuilt so many Onan V-twin or opposed twins that I'm used to 120 being the norm there, and so we'll see what the oil test is as soon as the camera will focus. Come on now. There we go. So here we go, the oil test, same cylinder as the first time. Uh-oh. I think we might have determined our problem there. Now the question is, what exactly is wrong with it? So let me get out from here and I'll go back over to the engine and we'll talk some more. So I went from 120, or a little over 120, to 45 or so. So 20 psi difference. We'll go ahead and test the three other cylinders to see what those compressions are. But maybe I need to go ahead and take the pony motor off and give it some new rings, or do something with the valve system or anything else. You know, we'll have to figure it out. So that's first place to start. Not something I'm going to get to immediately, that's for sure, but you know, as the time allows, I'll get to it. So I'll test the other four, and then I'll come back and report what my findings were.